My son said, "I can't afford your medicine expenses." But he bought a diamond ring for his wife. So I left his home without telling them I have $5 million in my bank account. I never imagined I'd end up like this. Not that I ever expected luxury in my old age, but I thought, maybe a little comfort, a little love, maybe a warm cup of tea in the evening, someone asking how I'm feeling, a hug from my grandson, a gentle laugh from my son. Just the simple things. Please like, subscribe, and share this story with your friends and family. Thanks. My name is Amina, and I'm 74 years old. I spent most of my life building a home, not a mansion of bricks and chandeliers, but a home filled with warmth, food on the table, and a roof that never leaked. I raised my son, Adam, alone after his father passed when he was just 5. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses during the day and stitching clothes late into the night. My hands still carry the shape of scissors and soap, my back still bends, from years of scrubbing other people's kitchens, but I never complained, because I had him, my boy, my only child, my world. Every shirt I ironed, every penny I saved, it was for Adam. I wanted him to study, to dream, to never feel the hunger I'd felt, or wear the same shoes for 3 winters like I did. When he got into college, I sold my gold bangles. When he got married, I gave him the keys to the house I had spent 30 years paying off, said it was his now. I moved into the small back room and never asked for anything. I was happy just being close. His wife, Sana, was sweet in the beginning. Polite, not warm, but respectful. I didn't expect more. I stayed out of their way, cooked when asked, babysat. Their son did the laundry, folded their clothes, things mothers do, things grandmothers do, quiet things, invisible things. But over the years, something changed. The greetings became shorter. My name faded into Mom and then into silence. My room became more of a corner. My voice, something that floated past them without being heard. I'd wait to eat until they were done. I'd ask if they needed anything from the market and get no answer. But still, I stayed. Still, I thought maybe they were just busy, tired, distracted. I kept telling myself, this is how the world is now. Children have their own lives. But something inside me began to ache. Not from illness, but from the slow realization that I had become a guest in the house I built. A stranger in the family I gave everything to. I used to imagine growing old surrounded by warmth. Maybe sitting, with Adam in the garden, watching the little one ride his bike. Maybe teaching him old songs, old recipes. Maybe just being needed, not for chores but for presence, for stories, for love. But now I spend most days sitting on the edge of my bed, listening to laughter coming from the other room and wondering if I still belong here. Last week, I asked Adam if he could help me with my prescription. The doctor says I need a stronger dose for my arthritis. I tried to keep my voice cheerful. I even said, "Don't worry, it's not urgent." He didn't even look up from his phone. Just said, "Mom, things are tight right now. We can't afford extra expenses." I nodded, smiled, left the room. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow, careful not to let anyone hear. But the next day, something happened, something that changed everything. And that's when I realized, maybe it's time they learn who I really am. The next morning, the smell of fried eggs filled the house. Sana always made breakfast for Adam and their son before he left for work. I sat up quietly on my narrow bed, careful not to make any noise. My bones were stiff from sleep, and I waited a moment before placing my feet on the cold floor. No one ever called me to the table anymore. They used to, in the beginning. Now, I waited until they were done. I'd go in after, collect the plates, wash the pans, wipe the counters. It had become routine, me cleaning the traces of their life, without being a part of it. That morning was no different. As I stepped out into the hallway, I saw my grandson zipping around the dining table in his school uniform, laughing. Sana was brushing his hair roughly, telling him to sit still. Adam sat with his eyes glued to his phone, sipping tea. None of them noticed me. I paused for a moment, then turned toward the kitchen, quietly boiling water for my own tea. I had stopped asking if I could join them a long time ago. I learned it was easier that way, easier to be invisible than to be an unwanted presence. I took my tea back to my room and sat by the small window. Outside, the sun had started to rise over the rooftops. I watched as the neighborhood children walked to school, their backpacks bouncing, their mothers tugging them along. I remember walking at him like that. Every morning, I'd hold his hand and say, "You're my little hero. One day, you'll do big things." And he'd beam with pride, gripping my fingers tighter. I don't know when that little boy disappeared. Now he walks past me like I'm just a piece of furniture. I hear him joke with Sana, laugh with friends over the phone, make plans for weekends. But rarely does he speak to me unless I ask something. Even then, his answers are short, dismissive. Once, I asked if we could put a chair in the backyard so I could sit in the sun. He said, "The backyard is a mess right now, Mom. We'll clean it later." That was 8 months ago. Sometimes I wonder if they think I'm too old to notice things, that I don't notice how Sana shifts uncomfortably when I walk into the living room, or how Adam lowers his voice when talking about money around me. They think I don't see the little glances they exchange, the silences. But I see everything, like the way they bought a new coffee machine last month. Or the dinner they had at a fancy restaurant last weekend. Sana had posted pictures on Facebook. The lighting was beautiful. The desserts looked expensive. I liked the photo. She never responded. I have a small drawer where I keep my belongings. A bottle of oil for my joints, my prayer beads, a framed photo of Adam as a boy, missing his 2 front teeth, smiling wide. Some evenings, I hold that frame in my lap and talk to it like he can still hear me. Like maybe that little boy is trapped, somewhere deep inside the man he's become. And I keep telling myself, maybe he's just busy. Maybe he's stressed. But the truth is harder to swallow. They don't see me as a mother anymore, not even as a person. I'm just here, like a shadow in their house, taking up space, quiet, out of place. Still, I stayed. Because a mother's heart clings to hope, even when it's been left out in the cold. But that hope? It wouldn't last much longer. Not after what I saw next. It started with a dull ache in my knees. Nothing unusual. At my age, pain becomes a quiet companion. But this time, it worsened. My fingers stiffened in the mornings. My back throbbed even when I sat still. I could no longer hold the prayer. Beads for long, and even folding clothes became difficult. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to bother anyone. But one afternoon, while reaching for a jar in the kitchen, my hand trembled and the glass slipped. It shattered on the floor, the sound ringing through the house like a slap. I dropped to my knees instinctively, brushing the shards with shaking fingers. Sana came in. Her eyes narrowed. "Mom, what are you doing? You could have cut yourself." I tried to smile through the pain. "I'm sorry, son." My hand slipped. "I'll clean it up." She sighed, turned, and walked away. No offer to help. Just a muttered, "Please be careful next time." That evening, I gathered the courage to speak to Adam. He was sitting in the living room, flipping through TV channels, the blue light dancing across his face. I stood at the edge of the doorway, hands clasped. "Adam's son?" I said gently. He looked up briefly. The doctor increased my arthritis medicine. He said the pain will get worse if I don't take it regularly. I was wondering if you could, just this time, get it for me from the pharmacy?" I watched his face. He didn't even blink. Just turned his eyes back to the screen and said flatly, "Mom, things are tight right now. We've had a lot of expenses. Let's wait a few weeks, okay?" A few weeks. For pain that made every movement feel like fire beneath my skin. I stood there stunned. "Oh, of course," I whispered. "No problem, son. I'll manage." He didn't respond. I walked back to my room, each step heavier than the last. As soon as I closed the door, the tears came, slow and hot, not because of the pain in my joints, but the pain in my chest, the kind of ache that comes from a wound you can't see, one that forms when love is given so freely. And returned with nothing. I didn't cry loudly. I never did. Mothers don't cry loudly. We learn to swallow our grief so it doesn't disturb anyone. We learn to suffer quietly. The next morning, I tried to forget it. Told myself I was being too sensitive. Maybe Adam really was struggling. Maybe things were tight. I repeated it like a prayer, until 2 days later. They were in the living room again, Adam and Sana, laughing, whispering, exchanging small glances. I was passing by when I heard her squeal. "Oh my God, Adam, it's beautiful!" I paused near the doorframe, unseen. He held a small velvet box in his hand, the lid open to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. Elegant, large, glinting even in the low light. "You deserve it," he said. 10 years of marriage. I wanted to surprise you." My heart stopped. A diamond ring, worth thousands, maybe more, for her finger. And just days ago, I was told they couldn't afford a basic medication for my aching bones. I stepped back into the hallway. Slowly, quietly. My knees trembled, not from arthritis this time, but from something colder, something sharper. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about value, about what I meant to them. And at that moment, I knew. They had shown me exactly where I stood in their lives. Not as a mother, not even as a human being. Just a burden, too expensive to care for. After that day, something inside me quietly cracked. Not like glass shattering, not with noise or fury. Just a slow, silent break, like ice splitting under pressure. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I already knew the answer. It wasn't that they didn't have the money. It wasn't that they forgot. It was that they didn't see me anymore. A few days later, I stood at the window of my room, watching the wind dance through the garden weeds. The old swing Adam used to sit on as a boy was now rusty and unused. I smiled to myself, remembering how he used to beg me to push him higher and higher, laughing like he could fly. Back then, I would have done anything to keep that smile on his face. Now, I wasn't. Even worth a bottle of medicine. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the small tin box I kept in my drawer, the one with all my important documents. There, neatly folded, was the record of the $5 million I had saved over a lifetime. Quietly, slowly, silently. The money came from years of discipline, a portion from the sale of a small plot of land I inherited, some from savings I tucked away when I worked as a tailor. Over the years, I never spent it. Not because I didn't need it, but because I always thought it would be for Adam, for his future, for his family, for an emergency. But now I realized I was the emergency, and no one came. I packed my things that night. Not much, just a few clothes, my prayer rug, my documents, and the photograph of young Adam, smiling. I wrapped it in a shawl and placed it gently in my bag. I didn't leave a note, didn't wake anyone up. What would I say? I'm leaving because I no longer feel like I belong in the house I built? No. Some things are too heavy for words. At dawn, I stepped out into the street. The morning air was crisp. The city was just beginning to stir. Shopkeepers yawning. As they lifted their shutters, birds calling out from rooftops, the sky painted with soft streaks of orange. I stood for a moment and looked back at the house. My house, the one I paid for with tired hands and sleepless nights. The one I gave away, thinking it would bring me closer to the people I loved most, but it hadn't. It had only made me smaller in their eyes. I whispered a prayer, not for revenge, not even for justice, just for peace, for the strength to begin again, even at this age. And then I walked away. I had a plan. There was an old friend, Shireen, who ran a small guest house on the edge of the city. She had once told me, "If you ever need a place, you come to me." I never thought I'd take her up on it. But now, with a suitcase in one hand and $5 million in my account, I felt like I could breathe again. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to remember me. I was remembering myself. The guest house was tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, modest, surrounded by bougainvillea vines, with sunlight spilling through the windows in long golden strips. Shireen greeted me at the gate, her eyes widening in surprise, and then filling with warmth. "Sophia," she gasped, "is everything okay?" I smiled, hugging her tight. "I just needed some space, Shireen. A place to rest, to think." She didn't ask questions. That's the kind of friend she was. Within a few hours, I had a small room with a clean bed, fresh bed sheets, and a window that opened to the garden. For the first time in years, no one told me I was in the way. No one looked through me. No one sighed when I entered the room. I was simply welcome. The first few days, I slept more than I had in years. The quiet wrapped around me like a blanket. I woke when I wanted, made my own tea, read books I hadn't touched in decades. There was a small masjid down the road, and I began walking there for prayer every evening, greeting neighbors with a gentle nod, hearing the call to prayer like a song for my soul. I didn't tell anyone about the money, not even Shireen. Had no interest in flashing wealth. I wasn't here to prove anything. I had already learned the hard way. Money may change how people treat you, but it doesn't change what they really see when they look at you. I was here to live, not to explain. Soon, Shireen asked if I'd like to help around the guest house, not as work, but for company. So I began folding linens, helping prepare meals, sitting with women who came from all over the country with their own stories, their own heartbreaks. One woman had just left a cruel husband. Another was visiting the city for her daughter's surgery. We laughed together, cried sometimes, shared recipes and quiet conversations over cups of chai. And slowly, I felt something return to me. Something I thought I had lost forever. My dignity. One morning, while walking through the garden, I saw a small boy playing with a toy car in the dirt. His mother sat nearby, looking exhausted. I smiled and said, "Can I show you how to build a little ramp for that car?" The boy nodded. We spent the next hour crafting a tiny path from sticks and pebbles. His laughter echoed through the garden. That day, his mother came to me with tears in her eyes. "He hasn't smiled like that in weeks," she said. "Thank you." And just like that, I remembered who I was. I was more than a mother whose son had forgotten her. I was more than a woman denied her medicine. I was a person who still had value, still had something to give, still had a heart full of love. And now, peace. Every night, I sat by the window and whispered a prayer. Not for Adam to come find me, not for him to regret what he had done, but for him to be kind to his son, for him to grow into the man I once believed he would become. I had no hatred left, only lessons. Because sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us the deepest. But walking away doesn't mean you've stopped loving them. It means you've started loving yourself. 3 days passed before Adam noticed I was gone. It wasn't during breakfast. He assumed I was still asleep. It wasn't during the afternoon either. He thought I must be praying or lying down. But that evening, when Sana asked if I'd like to join them for dinner, and Adam walked down the hallway to knock on my door, he found it slightly open. The room was empty. No clothes in the wardrobe, no prayer rug on the floor, no framed photo on the bedside table. Just an undisturbed bed and the soft scent of rose water lingering in the air. He blinked, confused. "Mom?" Nothing. Just silence. He checked the backyard, the porch, called my name louder this time. "Mom, are you outside?" Sana appeared, a frown forming on her face. "She's not in her room?" "No, her things are gone." They searched the house, every corner, every cupboard. As the minutes passed, confusion turned into worry, and worry twisted into something Adam hadn't felt in a long time: fear. He called my phone, switched off. He asked the neighbors. No one had seen me leave. Finally, in a hushed voice, he said it out loud. "She's gone." Sana looked at him, startled. But why would she leave? He sat down on the edge of the couch, his head in his hands, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. "I don't know." But deep down, he did. That night, he walked into my empty room again. He sat on the floor where I used to pray and looked around, seeing things he hadn't really noticed before. The hand-stitched cushion I sewed years ago, the faint lines in the carpet where I knelt 5 times a day, the slippers tucked neatly near the door. He remembered how just last week I'd asked him, so gently, for a small bottle of medicine, and how he had turned back to the TV without even looking up. A wave of shame washed over him. Suddenly he felt like a boy again, helpless, guilty, longing for the comfort only a mother could give. He found himself whispering, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I didn't think," but I wasn't there to hear it. The next morning, he took the day off from work. He went to the pharmacy, bought the medicine I needed, 2 bottles, and placed them on my bedside table, as if I'd walk back in and smile, surprised. I didn't. He called every relative, every old friend he could think of. No one knew anything. The house felt cold without my presence, the silence now louder than any argument could have been. When his 6-year-old son asked, "Dad, where's Grandma?" Adam knelt down, hugged him tightly, and said, "I don't know, son, but I hope she's somewhere peaceful." That night, he couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop and stared at the family photo saved as his desktop background. Me, Adam, Sana, and the baby, taken 10 years ago. I was smiling in it, holding the odd child gently, eyes full of warmth. Now he realized what that smile had cost me. Years of love, effort, self-sacrifice. And he had thanked me with neglect. And then the thought hit him like a slap. He hadn't even asked if I needed anything. After that night, he didn't notice the swelling in my hands, the limp in my walk, the glass I broke in the kitchen. He had been too busy, too distracted, too entitled. He finally said the words out loud, the ones that burned in his chest. I took her for granted. And now, she was gone. Adam couldn't sleep that night. The house felt emptier than ever, as if the walls themselves mourned Sophia's absence. The hollow silence echoed with all the things he hadn't said and the times he hadn't been there. A gnawing regret settled deep inside his chest. First thing in the morning, he made a decision. He was going to find his mother. He started calling her closest friends and neighbors, asking if anyone had seen her recently. Everyone seemed surprised. No one knew where. She had gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. His calls led him to Shireen, an old family friend whom his mother had mentioned in passing a few years ago. Adam's voice trembled when he dialed Shireen's number. "Hello, this is Adam. I'm looking for my mother, Sophia. She's missing." There was a brief pause, then Shireen's warm voice. "Adam, I wondered when you'd call. Your mother has been here. She came to me a few days ago." Relief and confusion washed over him. "She's with you? Why didn't she tell me?" Shireen sighed softly. "I think she needed a place to breathe, to find herself. It's not easy to leave your family, but sometimes people have to step away to heal." Adam thanked her and rushed over to the guest house. When he arrived, the place looked peaceful, sunlight filtering through curtains, birds chirping outside. He asked for his mother, and Shireen led him to a small garden courtyard where Sophia sat quietly on a bench, knitting a scarf. She looked up, startled at first, then softened when she saw him. "Adam," she said simply. He sat down beside her, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I didn't mean to make you feel unimportant." Sophia smiled gently, eyes calm but guarded. "I didn't leave because of the money or the ring. I left because I needed to remind myself of who I am beyond being your mother. I needed peace." Adam nodded, understanding now. "I was selfish. I thought everything else came first. But you were always there for me." She reached out and squeezed his hand. "It's not too late, Adam, but you have to show me, not just say it." Over the next days, Adam visited often. He helped at the guest house, listened to the stories of other women there, and slowly began to see his mother not just as his parent, but as a woman with dreams, struggles, and strengths. One afternoon, while going through some papers Sophia had left behind, Adam found a bank statement showing $5 million in her account. He was stunned. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked when he returned to the guest house. She looked at him, eyes bright. "Because I wanted you to treat me with respect and love, not because of money." Adam realized then the true cost of his neglect, not only the distance between them, but the loss of trust and understanding. From that moment, he vowed to make things right, not by empty apologies, but through actions that showed he truly valued her. The days that followed were unlike any Adam had ever known. No longer did he rush past his mother's presence, caught up in the noise of life. Instead, he learned to listen, to really listen, and to see her with fresh eyes. Sophia's smile was quieter now, but deeper. It wasn't forced or desperate. It was the kind of smile that comes from knowing your worth and being accepted for it. One morning, Adam brought her a cup of tea and sat beside her on the guest house bench. "Mom," he said softly, "I want to start over, not just for you, but for us." Sophia looked at him, eyes steady and calm. "That begins with honesty and respect," she replied. "Not just words, but in every small thing." Adam nodded, understanding the weight of her words. It wasn't enough to say sorry once. It meant showing up, being present, being patient, being kind. Slowly, the distance between them began to close. Adam helped with daily chores, made sure she never missed a doctor's appointment, and most importantly, he shared his time with her. He listened to her stories from the past, the dreams she had once held, the sacrifices she made quietly. One evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sophia shared something she'd kept inside for years. "I never wanted to burden you with my troubles," she said. "I saved that money not to hold it over anyone's head, but as a security, a promise to myself that I mattered." Adam felt tears prick at his eyes. "You always mattered, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't show it." They sat together in silence, watching the sky turn from orange to purple. It was a moment of peace neither thought possible before. In the weeks that followed, Sophia's health improved. The medicine she needed was no longer a source of stress or shame, but a small, manageable part of her life. And Adam? He grew into a man who understood that love was not just given in grand gestures, but in the daily acts of care and respect. The day Sophia returned home was quiet, but full of promise. She stood at the door, suitcase in hand, and looked at her, son and granddaughter, waiting eagerly to welcome her back. "I'm ready," she said softly. Adam hugged her tightly, whispering, "Welcome home, Mom." For Sophia, it wasn't just the house that felt like home. It was the renewed bonds, the respect she earned, and the peace she found within herself. Sometimes, the hardest journeys lead us back to the people we love, but on new terms, stronger, wiser, and full of hope.